Hello my reading friends and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be running through my February reading journal review. If you haven't seen this before, you didn't watch last month, essentially this is like the shorter version if you don't want to watch my actual reading wrap up, which generally goes up first. So that's like the in-depth, face-to-face run through catch up about my books, and then I also post a reading journal version, which is like you still get to know and listen to the books that I've read and I've enjoyed and what I haven't, etc. But it's a bit more of a brief version. I don't go into the books themselves as much. I more talk about the spreads that I put together and how I used my journal to track them. So you might not need to watch both because there is definitely crossover. They're the same books, but I'm trying to make them different in what we're actually going through. So running through obviously the month of February, so we're going to come back to this page. We're going to start with some additions. So first things first, I have updated my 25 books in 2025, which if anyone can do the maths, I'm probably going to finish this quite soon, and so I'm definitely going to not only need this page but potentially like a fold out section because I might even need more, but we have filled in. I read 9 books in Jan, so I then read 8 in February. So from this book, I think, is that right? Yes, from this book to here, all my February reads. Then I did pick my monthly favourite, which is Nocticadia, so we'll come back to that when I run through my spread, but this was actually hard this month because I had 3 5-star reads, which I could have picked any one of the 3, but how I chose it was I went based on what book can I not stop thinking about the most, like what book is in my head. Do I wish there was a sequel? Do I want to learn more? Do I want to read more? And that's how I went with Nocticadia. But as I said, am I even in focus? As I said, it was a very hard choice. Like, I had a great reading month, so I think that's in focus. Yeah, so we'll come back to why I chose that, but as in like what the other options were, but it is Nocticadia. We'll come back to my stats in a second. I did fill out my book club pick, so for the month of February it was Psyche and Eros by Luna McNamara, and I rated it a 4 stars, which is a great improvement from 2.5 stars that I rated January's pick, so we'll run through that again in a minute. And then I did fill up some more of my shelves. I'm still not sure how I want to run with this because I've obviously severely underestimated how many books that I'm reading, and so I'm already like halfway through the shelf and we're only in February, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do about this yet, but I am still filling it out as I go. So that's, I guess, the general tracking pages, and now we'll come back to February. So I did a like Valentine's love obviously theme for February, so I used some papers and stickers that I got actually at Kmart. They had like a little Valentine's Day craft section, and so I used those, which I thought was really fun. I then did my standard calendar, what I read and stats. I definitely like this better than my January version. Like, this is a lot more satisfying to look at. It's still not exactly how I want it, so I'm still trying to come to what that looks like, but it's definitely far, like, I hate this now looking at that, whereas like this is at least, it's fun, it's eye-catching, I enjoy it. I just need to like tweak it. So my average rating was 4.13 stars, which is so exciting. It was actually 4.5 stars until the 22nd of, no, to the 24th of February, and then once I rated this book, unfortunately the last 2 books weren't such hits, so it did go down, but I still think 4.13 is fabulous. Last month it was 3.77, so that's a big jump, and I felt it. I really felt like I had a great reading month. As I said, I read I read 3 5-star books, and then I also read a couple of 4.5 star. So I really like had a great time. I read 3,342 pages and 4 genres, which if you watch last month's video, you'll know that my genres definition is a little different to what you actually might find the book defined as. So my genres that I read were romance, romantasy, historical, and what's the 4th? Fantasy. So not your traditional genres, but that's how I like to keep track of them in my head, and that's how I also track here. Like, this is my way of doing things. So and then I read 23 out of 28 days, so I definitely had more days off reading this month compared to, what did I read? 27 out of 31 last month, and I really noticed that because I kept reading 5-star books. I needed like a day to process that book before I moved on to the next one. Whereas if I read a 3 or a 4-star, I'm like, great, what's next? What can I get into? 5-star, I'm like, holy shit, that changed my life. Now I just need to like sit with it. So that's why I had a few, and they're all like spread out. You can see literally the day after I finish a book, the day after I finish a book, the day after I finish a book. So I really just like needed to sit with the 5-star reads. And so I definitely, although I read more pages, I actually read less days. So you can see my stats here. 2 5-star reads last month and 3 this month. And I also read 3 genres last month, whereas I read 4 this month. So I just had a great month. I'm like really excited about it, if you can't tell. So moving on to my spreads. So the first 2 books that I finished were What the River Knows and Where the Library Hides. And I don't know if they are, well, they are a duology. I don't know what the name of the duology is, but they are a 5-star duology for me, and I absolutely loved them. I rated the first book 5 stars and the second book 4 stars, and I put together this like ancient Egypt page. This is some fan art that I found of the 2 main characters, and I think it's just the most beautiful fan art that I've ever seen. It captures like ancient Egypt and then also like the 2 of them, and it is from the first book, which I feel like they were a lot, not easy, I guess easier. They were a lot more fun to root for in the first book. In the second book, I didn't love them as a couple as much. He did some very questionable things, and she just, well, that's just how it is. That's just how it is. And I was like, no, that's not how it is. You are so like fierce against, like, it's set in 1880s, so it's obviously very patriarchal, and she's so fierce against certain things, but she lets this guy just do other things. I don't know. So I'm really happy that this is from the first book, because that's what I really loved about them, the first book. So my kind of catchword for the first book was thrilling. And my review, this was incredible and I loved every second. The setting was beautiful and the story kept me on my toes, which, that's a great summary. I wrote this a month ago and I still agree with that. It was the setting that absolutely, that's why this is a 5-star book for me. I've never read anything like it in terms of setting. I read the reviews and it reviews quite poorly. It is young adult and a lot of people just didn't think the story was well developed and whatever, and maybe it's not, but for me the setting was incredible and I loved the story, so I loved everything about this. And then, as I said, the second book I rated 4-star, and the kind of thing that stuck out to me was just like twist after twist. Like, it didn't quite hit like the first book, but I still loved it. The twists became a little too much. And I went into this more in my reading review, but essentially it just became like a, how many wow shock factor moments can I fit into a book? Every chapter was like, oh wow, and this happened, and oh, like this reveal, and oh, and I just kind of it lost the magic of the story and went a little crazy in terms of trying to like wow the reader. However, it was still the same setting, it was the same characters, it was still like an amazing read. It just wasn't quite as amazing as the first one. And I used the quote, "The Nile knew everything, had seen the best and worst of Egypt." And I just loved that because the book is centered around the Nile. Obviously at that time, like in the 1880s, the rivers were such an important part of like getting around. Not that they're not now, but it just like, I don't know, the magnitude of the river is so big. And that quote just fit perfectly. So I also used some like wood grain paper to kind of set the backdrop, and this is probably my favorite, my favorite page that I've ever done in my journal. I love it. Then moving over to just like the generic reads, and I just noticed I haven't actually filled this in, so maybe we'll do this live. This is just like the books that I read that I didn't feel like doing a whole page for. So I finished then Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. I read Bride last month as my first ever Ali Hazelwood, and decided to jump straight into, pardon the pun, Deep End because it came out this month. I rated it 4 stars. It was quick, fun, and spicy. I used to be a diver as well as being a gymnast, which actually I spoke about a gymnast in I filmed a lot of videos today. That was in my last video, but so how fun to go back to the world of competitive diving, fast-paced, spicy romance, and exactly my style, that's exactly what I want a contemporary romance for. It's never going to be my favorite. I am a fantasy romance girly, but contemporary has its place in my reading zone for exactly this. I just come off a really amazing, interesting, in-depth historical series, and I needed something like fun and short and sharp, and that was Deep End. So I really enjoyed it. Then we had my Feb book club pick, which was Psyche and Eros, as you saw in my book club spread. This was a Greek mythology retelling, which was my first ever. I've never read anything like that before, which completely surprised me as I've never read anything like it before. Great pick, which again, I hated January's book, so it was a huge turnaround. So much so that I even found some fan art for Psyche and Eros that I actually really liked, so I put that in there as well. But they're not quite amazing books enough to do a whole spread, so that's why I just like did a little bit of theming, but not too much. And then I read 2 5-star reads back to back, and I like this page has a special place in my heart. I love her so much. So up the top we have Nocticadia, which ended up being my favorite book of the month, but as I said, it could have been What the River Knows, Nocticadia, or The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Not only were they all 5-star books, they were also like favorite books, like all-time favorites. But at the end of the day, Nocticadia is the one that I keep thinking about. I keep like wishing there was a sequel and wanting to know more about them and like being in this world, and so that's what ultimately meant like that's got to be my favorite. But again, they were all fabulous books. So Nocticadia is a forbidden romance. It is a teacher-student situation, which not everyone loves, but I have no issues with it. It was done so well, and I just, chef's kiss. So incredible dark academia setting with student-teacher romance, absolutely delicious, and I couldn't stop reading. So this is like a 600 something plus page book, and I read it in 24 hours. I could not put it down. I was like obsessed with it. I just wanted to keep reading and reading and reading and reading. So that's when you know, like, it's just, obviously moths are quite a big part of the series, so that's why I've got those. And then I found these purple butterfly clip art things as well, which just felt like perfect with the theme. I don't think there's actually butterflies in the book, but it felt right. And then it's funny, the quote like is a little creepy. She was the warmth of the sun on a cold and rotting corpse, the first breath after a lifetime of death. But knowing our Professor Daddy in this book, it makes sense. He is like obsessed with death and dark things, and he's literally called Dr. Death. That's his like nickname. So although it's a weird quote without context, it's not in the book. Like it makes sense for him, and that's why I chose it. And I just loved this art of Derek and Lilia. I don't know. There was a few that I was choosing from, but this one to me felt most like what I see in my head. A lot of the arts of Lilia, she looked quite young, and like, I know she is young, but like almost, I don't know, like baby-like, not baby, but like much younger features that just did not align with what I see in my head. So that's why I went with this one. And then on the bottom of the page, again, I went straight into, from this, I like needed something to, what the hell do I read next? And I was suggested The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and it was another 5-star read. I read this as well in 24 hours. It was definitely a shorter book, but I couldn't put it down. And I rated it 5 stars, obviously. Powerful, a compelling story of love, loss, and determination. What an incredible book. 100 out of 5. Like, you cannot even rate a book like that. It was historical again, which is something I've now found. I actually seem to love historical books, like set in different, like obviously that was set in the 1880s. This is set between like the 50s and the 80s, like the 1950s and the 1980s, and apparently that's my thing. Like, I love reading about history, but not like, so many books are set during war, which I understand, but that's not my thing. So that side of historical is not my thing, but like no, I don't want to say interesting, because that's, you know, do you know what I mean? Like the right kind of historical for me. And then I found this incredible artwork of Evelyn and her 7 husbands and Monique, I think it's Monique, as well. And I just thought, no, that's not Monique, that's the girlfriend. What's her name? Cecilia. And I just like, there was so many beautiful artworks of Evelyn Hugo that I could have gone with, but this one had all of the husbands and Cecilia, and I just thought like, when I'm looking back on this and I just flip through it and I'm like, oh, that's right. That's the story. Does that, like, do you know what I mean? So, whereas if it was just her, I'd be like, wait, what happened again? So, I don't know. That was what did it for me. And then I also found these really beautiful shades of my Simply Gilded Bow Washi that matched both of these, like purple and green, perfectly. Then we move back to the final couple of books that I read, which is where my month started to, well, it didn't start, it jumped off a cliff. I finished Finale by Stephanie Garber, which is the final book in the Caraval series. And I've written that I rated it 3.5 stars, which is what I rated it straight after I finished it, but it's probably more of a 3-star. And I've written my like catch line, a disappointing end, so I'll need to go back in and kind of fill that out. And then I also read the novella, which is why that one's a bit smaller. And I rated it 2.5 stars because I really did not like it at all. And questionable is what I found it. I did not like, it's a really disappointing end to this series, which was brought back by Legendary. I liked Caraval, I didn't love it. And then Legendary, I really liked. I think like I did like a whole page on it. Here, I loved Legendary. And then I didn't like the last 2, so I think this is definitely 3 stars. I'm gonna have to redo this because this was 4 stars and I loved it. This can't be 3.5 stars when I didn't love it. It just doesn't make sense. But yeah, just a really disappointing end. I don't know. This book in particular felt very young, like very YA. Which is, like, it is a YA series, but I didn't feel that way in the other 2. Whereas this one was like, what the hell was the plot? The big bad guy just came out of nowhere. He wasn't in any of the other books. And, of course, he has to be connected to one of the sisters. Like, of course. I don't know, it wasn't set in Caraval. It was in the world, but there was no Caraval actually taking place. So I don't know, not for me. And then I fucking hated the novella. I love a good Christmas special, like A Court of Frost and Starlight is actually one of my favorite books. I love it. Did not like this one. This was weird. You cannot have 2 characters who you're supposed to be rooting for, but one of them acts like he's not even interested in the other, in her. Like it's not romantic, it's not interesting, it's not a love story. And then, like, there's a scene with, like, questionable consent, and it's just, like, icky and weird, and no thank you. So, we plunged off the cliff at the end of the month, but that's okay because my first March book, spoiler, is already a 5-star. So we've brought it back. I'm happy with that. And then we move into my wrap up. So February in review. So my favorite was Nocticadia. Least favorite was Spectacular. Surprise was Evelyn Hugo because I've never read anything like it. 5-star reads, so Nocticadia, Evelyn Hugo, and What the River Knows. Less than 300 pages, I read 13%, which was one book. More than 500 pages was also one book, and so 6 were between 300 and 500, which makes total sense when, like, it's me. That's kind of my sweet spot. And then I thought I was really clever with saying the month of loving my reads. Obviously February being the month of love, loving my reads, haha, so funny, she is a comedian. But really, I did. 3 5-star reads from 8 books and an average rating of 4.13. What a great month. I didn't read a bad book until the very end of the month. No complaints here. Like, I don't have... Last month I did a double spread for my wrap up, which... There's a lot of space that I didn't use. I just used because I'd already put aside a double spread. But this month I decided to put it on one. And I feel like I like the one better. We review Feb and we're into the next month. Like I like this better than the double, which is surprising because I really thought I was going to continue the double. I feel like it's short, sharp, to the point. I've got the stats and then I've got like the feelings and the thoughts. Like the objective, subjective. I like that style. But yeah, then we're on to March, which I've started reading, but I haven't started filling out. So that is everything for the month of February. Again, a banger reading month. I don't know how I'm going to be able to replicate it, but I'm already off to a 5-star start. So hopefully I can continue that. I will catch you guys in my next reading video. Thank you for checking this one out. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you next time. Bye!